looking at our beautiful Christmas tree, Árbol de Navidad. All the ornaments, los adornos that Sonrísa has given us look just right. And our popcorn chain, la cadena de palomitas, looks really good. And our star, la estrella, is shining bright. Everything's looking so nice. Except for that ugly black tree stand at the bottom. Those tree feet kind of ruined the whole look of the tree. I wonder if I have something that we could use to fix that. Let's see here. It's a tree skirt. This is just what we need. Lo que necesitamos. This red tree skirt will cover that black stand. Let's see here. Get down here and see if we can cover that up. Stretch it out. Ooh, it's a big one. But it's all right. Oh, that's looking good. There we are. Yeah, now, anytime people look at the tree, they're gonna see the red tree skirt instead of the ugly black stand. Oh, it's really looking. Did I just see Sonrísa? You saw him too? Oh, great! I'm so happy, 'cause Jesus is a friend of mine. Let's see what new ornaments, adornos, Sonrísa has for us today. Come on, vamos! Every time Sonrísa goes back into his house bag, su casa bolsa, he has given us some ornaments for our tree. And the first ornament for today is yellow, amarillo. And it has a door on it, una puerta. God created the world to be a perfect place. But when Adam and Eve disobeyed God, they sinned. And sin always ruins everything. And just like Lucifer had to leave heaven when he sinned, Adam and Eve had to leave God's perfect garden. And because of their sin, the wrong they did, the world was no longer perfect. Now weeds and thorns would grow up. The animals weren't nice anymore. And work was no longer fun. It was hard and boring. When God made Adam and Eve, everything was perfect and good. So Adam and Eve didn't even have to wear clothes. But now, everything changed, and Adam and Eve had to cover up by wearing clothes. They tried to make themselves some clothes out of some leaves and plants, but that wasn't good enough. God gave Adam and Eve clothes made from animal skins. What is this? Sonrísa, this isn't an ornament. This is a list of sins. These are all wrong things that I have done. Like this one says lying. That's not telling the truth. This one is stealing. I've taken something that wasn't mine before. This one says cussing, saying bad words, or being disrespectful with our speech. Bullying, being mean to others. Hitting for no reason. Like if your brother or sister hitting them, that can be a sin. Disobeying, not doing what I'm told. Cheating, not following the rules so that I can win. Getting jealous. Wanting what someone else has. Throwing a fit. If I don't get what I want, then I'm gonna kick and scream and cry until they give me what I want. Remember, sin is anything we think, say, or do that makes God sad. Well, now that we have all these sins, what's the next ornament? Oh, it's two little babies. Aww. When Adam and Eve lived outside of the garden, they had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain and Abel were born with sin because everyone born after Adam and Eve are born with sin. That means you and I are born with sin too. Like, just look at all the sins I have on me. But Adam and Eve taught their sons about God's promise, that God promised to save them from the punishment of their sin, and to explain how bad sin is and how awful the punishment is. Adam and Eve taught their boys something God asked them to do to understand it better. Here we have, it's a sheep. Una oveja. What does a sheep say? Good. Bah. What God had asked them to do was they had to get a sheep. They had to get an animal, usually a lamb. It had to be a boy lamb, and it had to be the very best lamb. The lamb couldn't have broken legs or look funny. It couldn't have a big head or a hoof that was too small. It couldn't be too fat or too skinny. It had to be perfect. It had to be the very best lamb in the whole flock. El mejor cordero. They were to take that lamb to a special place of death, muerte, called an altar. And then they had to put their hand on the head of that lamb. And when they put their hand on the lamb's head, it was as if their sins were being taken off of them and placed onto the lamb. So now, the lamb had the person's sin on him. But what did God say the punishment for sin was? Death. Now, because the lamb had the person's sin on him, the lamb had to die. It was the only way that the person could live. It was because of the person's sin. Because of the person's sin that lamb had to die. The lamb took the punishment from the person and he died instead. Now, when God looked down and looked at the person, God didn't see the sins because it was as if the blood from that lamb covered the sins. So when God saw the person, he saw the lamb's blood instead of the sins. But this was just an example of what God had promised to do. We don't need a lamb anymore. Look at this ornament. It's Jesus being born as a baby and Jesus dying on the cross. God's promise was that a perfect boy would be born, and that perfect boy would grow up to be a perfect man. And one day that man would go to a special place of death called a cross, and he would die on that cross, and he would give his blood. Our sins would be placed on him, and his blood wouldn't just cover our sins, they would wash them away. Jesus died for our sins so we don't have to. And knowing that God promised someone to take our place brings us one day closer to learning what Christmas is really about. See you tomorrow. Hasta mañana.